Hello everyone, Cindy here with Monarch Mom DIY. Thank you so much for joining me today on my channel where I love to bring you the best tips and tools for creating beautiful home decor on a budget. Today I am here with 6 high-end neutral farmhouse home decor DIYs, so let's get crafting. For today's first project, I'm going to show you how you can take 2 items from Dollar Tree and make something beautiful. I'm using 2 of these plastic pencil holders and 2 of the bamboo cutting boards. The first thing I'm going to do once I remove the pencil holders from the package is I'm going to take those outside and I'm going to spray paint those black. The reason I do spray paint first is because it gives it a nice base coat that is easier to paint. Now I'm going to leave the bamboo cutting boards as they are, but here I'm just putting a couple marks with my Sharpie of where I'm going to drill some holes for hanging later. Now this is the finish I get from a satin black spray paint. I don't like how it's kind of shiny in some places, but it did help me cover up that green. So now I'm just going to give each of my pencil holders 1 coat of my Waverly chalk paint in the color ink. And then once that dries completely, I will spray both of my pencil holders with a matte clear finish spray. And I really like the finish on this, and I know that all my green has been covered up. Then I'm simply going to take some E6000. I much prefer these small tubes from Walmart. They're a lot easier to get all of the glue out. And I'm just going around the bottom of the pencil holder, and then I'm going to place that all the way at the bottom and then center it on my bamboo cutting board. And that is all I am going to do to keep these very simple and neutral. You could add some ribbon to the front. You could stencil an image. Here I'm just going to take some jute twine going from the front to the back so that there's just a little knot on the front side. And I'm going to string about 8 white wood beads here on each one, just again to add a little more decorative touch. Then once I have all the beads on, I will take my twine from the back to the front, figure out how long I need it to be for the hanger, and then add my other knot and trim my twine. So I'm going to do this same thing on my second bamboo cutting board. You could make these as a pair. You could just make one of these. If you can't find the bamboo cutting boards, you could use any of the Dollar Tree frames or wood signs for your background for this project. I know sometimes the bamboo cutting boards are hard to find. Then just taking some Dollar Tree, or you could also use Walmart florals. I'm just stuffing those in. I'm not putting any foam in there. I'm not putting hot glue. This way, because the holders themselves are neutral, you could change out the florals for any holiday or season. And I think these are just so pretty with that little pop of color for spring. DIY number 2, I'm going to show you how you can take one of the Dollar Tree pennant signs, the master plan, and some burlap and a stencil, and I'm also going to use some greenery. We're going to make this into a beautiful piece of art. So I'm spritzing on some water and scraping off the glitter. This is the easiest way to get the glitter off of the front, and then once I have it all scraped off, just using a paper towel to wipe off that surface. Then we'll let that dry completely. Now, a lot of times you'll see me peel off the paper, but this time I decided just to leave it on. I am going to need 2 coats of my Waverly chalk paint in plaster. I decided to use a more muted white. This is kind of a cream or an ivory. So 2 coats of this will completely cover all those colors on that paper. But like I said, you could peel the paper off and then paint, or you could even Mod Podge right over top of those bright colors. I showed, I believe, a couple weeks ago how to make some burlap flowers, pulled string flowers. These are 2 more burlap ribbons I got at Walmart. One is burgundy, one is yellow. I wasn't sure as I was going which color flower I was going to want, so you might see pieces of me making both colors, but I did end up only using one of these flowers in my final product. But here I'm just cutting about an 16 to 18 inch length of burlap. I did notice that it was kind of uneven, so I did have to trim it up a little bit. You can see how the lines are kind of angling to the side, so I will need to trim it a little bit. But basically, to make these, you're going to remove a few strands from the shorter ends, and then you're going to pull almost all of the long strands out from the center, except leaving maybe 2 or 3 on either side where the ribbon is kind of sewn or glued. So you can see how uneven that is. So I am going to trim that up once I get it straightened. And then these are super fun and easy to make. I do have a couple more types of flowers that I am learning how to make that I will be showing you in upcoming projects. So here, holding with my left hand, I'm pulling 1 string out at a time with my right hand, and this is what's going to open up the ribbon to give us our flower. Then once I have all those middle strings out, I'm going to run a bead of my low temperature hot glue along the edge there, and I'm folding the ribbon in half. You can already see there on the left-hand side how the inside strings are forming loops. So once you get that all folded over and glued, we'll trim the ends just a little bit, and then we will roll it up to make our flower. Next, you'll see me rolling up the burgundy burlap flower. Just pretend you're watching me roll up the yellow one because I end up using that one instead. But just running the hot glue, I'm rolling it and trying to keep it as flat as possible over there on the right-hand side, which will be the bottom of our flower and is where we will put some glue to attach it to our final product. So just keep adding your hot glue, rolling it, making it as flat as possible, and then we'll move on to the next step, which will be to fluff out our loops and arrange our flower. So now that the flower is all glued and rolled up, I start at the outside and I just kind of start laying flat the loops and pulling them, kind of spreading them out into the flower shape. I mean, you could spend as little or as much time on this. It all just depends on how you want your flower to look. You could even leave it like this without something in the middle, making it flat and making it able to stand up a little bit more. But I'm trying to get it as even as possible all the way around, and then I'll put a wood button in the center for the middle of our flower. Also using that Cool Shot glue gun. I think this is really important when you're doing these pulled string flowers so that you don't burn yourself. These are just some buttons that I got at Walmart, and then our flowers are finished and we can move back to our pennant sign now that it is dry. So I don't know if you could tell on camera, but there's a little bit of texture under that paint because of those letters a little bit. So I'm going to try to hide that. And I'm going to take my mineral Waverly chalk paint, just a light gray, and a chippy brush. And I'm just going to add a little more texture to it, to the front of the sign, to kind of help, like I said, hide the indents, I guess, where some of those letters were. So I dry brushed some gray on, and then I sanded a little bit, and then I dry brushed a little bit more, making some maybe bigger splatters of the gray. But this is totally a preference thing. You do as much or as little, or if you just want to keep it a solid color, that's totally great too. I decided to go with neutral colors for this so that my flower was my pop of color. Now it's really easy to pull one side of the jute twine out from under the staple, and then I'm just going to wrap a little bit of tape on the end, and I want to add some beads to this as well. I feel like this just really helps elevate the look of the project. So the twine isn't just, you know, plain twine to hang with. You can actually make it part of the decoration. So I decided to go with gray beads for this one since I had added a little bit of gray to the front of my sign. And then once we have those beads all on there, I'm going to lift up that staple a little bit so I can put the twine back under. Once I have it where I want it, you'll see I'll take my little hammer and just re-pound that staple back in and then trim my twine. So I just love how this elevates the look of the project even more. Before I stencil my word onto the front of my sign, I do want to kind of lay out my greenery and my yellow burlap flower that I'm going to use, just so I can kind of see the spacing. I'm going to use this prayer is the key to heaven, but faith unlocks the door stencil, but I'm just going to do the word pray. So you can see I kind of have it down there towards the bottom right corner, but I have not glued on my flower or my greenery yet. I'm going to get my word in place and then just using a tiny amount of my black chalk paste from Magnolia Design Company, we'll get that word pray stenciled down there. I will say that I did spray a clear matte spray over the chalk paint before I stenciled the image, and then I will spray another layer of matte clear once I have the word stenciled on there so that it will not be able to be wiped off with any water. So now that that is dry, now I'm just going to hot glue my yellow burlap flower and my two little pieces of greenery there, and then this sign will be complete. And here's our finished sign. I love it. I love how rustic it looks with the texture on the sign. And I love the pop of color from that yellow burlap pulled string flower. If you're stopping by my channel for the first time today, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I really hope you consider sticking around by hitting that subscribe button, and everyone should hit the bell and check your notifications so that YouTube will let you know each time I upload new content. If you are a returning viewer or subscriber, welcome back. Thank you so much for your continued support of my channel. For DIY number 3, we're going to use a few Dollar Tree items to make a very versatile holder using one of these burner covers, a large glass margarita glass, and one of these white mesh baskets. So of your two that come in your burner cover set, the smaller one is going to fit as a lid on that white mesh basket. Here I just have a large wooden bead that's flat on the bottom. I'm going to paint this black to use for the top of our lid. So we'll just give that a coat of ink, chalk paint, and let that dry. Now I did spray paint the margarita glass. You'll see that. And I did spray paint the burner cover, but just on the outside because the underside was white, and that was fine. Now to glue my mesh basket onto the bottom of my margarita glass, I am using E6000. I just felt like this would hold much better than hot glue. And I am going to let this sit with a little bit of pressure on it. I think I'm going to put my Hydro Flask down on there just to weight it down until the E6000 is dried completely, about 24 hours. To add a little decoration to the lid for our holder, I'm going to take my black and white gingham ribbon from Michaels and also E6000 since I'm gluing it onto metal. so that, because hot glue, whenever I try to glue ribbon onto metal, if I use hot glue, it just peels right off. So use E6000 or super glue or something like that. But I did go all the way around that little edge on our lid. And I also used E6000 to glue the wood knob to the center of the lid as well. And for one final touch, I did also with that same ribbon make a small simple bow that I'm going to glue on the lid where the two ends of the ribbon that I glued on meets up, just to kind of hide that so you don't see the end of the ribbon there. So just with a little bit of hot glue this time, I just glued that right over that spot. And then this project is done. You can use this. I've seen people use them to put K-cups in by their coffee station. If you had larger, like, I don't know, the fun size candy bars, you could put those in there as well. Or even like Hershey Kisses at Christmas or Valentine's time. For more information about the tools and supplies I'm using in today's DIYs, please click the down arrow next to the title of this video. That will open up the description box, and all of that information can be found there. You guys always love when I make projects using tumbling tower blocks, so today I have another lantern for you, also using nautical rope and a couple pieces of 5-gallon paint stick. So for this design, we're making 12 shapes like you see above, the little rectangles. So to start those out, I need to glue 24 pairs of tumbling tower blocks end to end like you see me. I'm just matching them up size-wise just to make sure, because, you know, there is a little bit of fluctuation with some of the widths and thicknesses of the tumbling tower blocks. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Is I'm going to take 48 blocks and I'm going to pair them up end to end, and I am using white glue for this, or I'm sorry, wood glue, not hot glue, because I want these to be a permanent bond. And we're getting now our 24 sets of blocks. Once those were dry completely, I did take my little sander and just did a light sanding to get any excess glue. And then we're going to put our rectangles together. So taking 2 pairs of our blocks, I'm gluing those to one tumbling tower block there on the left. Once I have those nice and straight, I'll take another single block and put that on the right side there. So I'm going to make 12 of these rectangles. And again, letting that wood glue dry completely once we have all 12 of those made. So here's a picture of all 12 of my rectangles, and then I'm going to put them together in 4 sets like this, with individual blocks between my bottom and middle rectangle, and then also between my middle and top rectangle. So I'm lining those vertical blocks right at the center, just eyeballing it right at the center of the rectangle there, each of the horizontal blocks. And I did do just these 2 layers first, using the paint sticks to make sure they are lined up. And then I let those dry completely on all 4 before I then glued on my next 2 vertical blocks and my top rectangle. I hope that makes sense. I think you can see what I'm doing here. The important thing I feel when you're using wood and the wood glue is you really do want to make sure you let everything dry completely before you move on to your next step so that you have that permanent hold and your project isn't going to fall apart. Now you'll see I just left my blocks the natural. You could definitely paint these, but I would paint all your blocks before you start gluing them together. It would be much easier than trying to paint all the nooks and crannies of this lantern once it's put together. So there you could see on my bottom piece there, I put glue on the side of each of the rectangles, and then I'm gluing the next piece to the side like that. The piece on the right, I'm just using to kind of pinch it in. And then my next piece, same thing. I put glue on the side rectangles of the bottom one, and then I'm lining it up. And then once we get that one dry, we will add our final piece into our lantern. And to glue this last piece, you will still put glue on the side of those rectangles, but then also on the top of this one so that you've got the glue on both ends so you're completing the square. I will say the other great thing about using the Titebond wood glue, besides the permanent hold, is that you do have a little bit of time to move things around and make sure they're lined up. Now for the bottom of my lantern, I had these leftover pieces of paint stick from a previous project. I'm going to cut 3 of them so that they will lie across the bottom of the lantern. They will have a little bit of space between them. You'll see here, I didn't have enough room to do 4. It would overlap. So I decided just to do 3 and to have a little bit of space there at the bottom. Just using some wood glue on either end, we will glue those down and then let that dry completely. Now you could put whatever you want inside this. I'm going to use these 3 mini greenery wreaths that were sent to me from a subscriber. And I did have to open them up just a little bit more so that they would fit around the base of this battery powered candle. So I'm going to use just all 3 that came in the package. It looks like these were originally from Bullseye's Playground at Target for $3. So I'm just sliding those on, and since they will be around the candle, you can see I could just set that right down inside. Now for the handle for our lantern, I'm going to take 3 lengths of nautical rope, and I'm going to first hot glue them together just on the end there. You could always just do 1 length of the rope and that be your handle, but I thought it would be fun to take 3 lengths, and I'm basically just going to braid them together once that glue is a little dry. I'm going to tack it down to my table with a little bit of tape and just loosely braid. I think everybody pretty much knows how to braid. You take the left one over the center, then the right one over the center, and I didn't have it super tight because I wanted it to be straight. So I'm just going to keep braiding those till I get towards the end, and then we'll hot glue both ends to stop it or to end the braid. Once I had put the hot glue, I decided I also would take a couple of zip ties to go around either of the ends of my braid, just so they wouldn't come undone or unglued. And so you can see there I'm just sliding it on, and then I'll do that on both ends of however long I decided I needed my braid to be. Then just trim your rope, and then we're going to glue that inside the top of our lantern. And here you can see, instead of trying to go straight across, I decided to put the rope handle in 2 of the corners. So I put some glue there in that top left corner and then put some on the rope braid. I'm going to press that into the corner and hold it there until it's dry. Then I'm going to come across diagonally with my braided rope and do the exact same thing in the opposite corner. And here's our finished lantern. I love this design, and I love that you could take this and make them taller or shorter depending on how many sets of the rectangles you use. If you love budget home decor DIY videos like this, please consider giving this video a thumbs up, as that lets YouTube know that people are enjoying my content, and then they will show it to more and more viewers. DIY number 5 is going to be this double hoop plant shelf. I'm going to use 2 sets of these brass wreath rings and 1 of these box signs from Dollar Tree. The hardest part of this project was getting this front piece off of this sign. You could do this idea with any of the long signs like this. This is just what I had on hand. So once I got that off, I decided to cover up the sunflowers with something a little more neutral. This is just some shelf liner paper from Dollar Tree as well. If I did this again, I probably would first paint over the sunflowers because I was able to kind of see them through the contact paper, but not a big deal because this is just a project for me. So get that shelf paper all lined up, and then you can trim any excess with your little fingertip knife. Now, these ring sets come with 3 different sizes. So I did purchase 2 sets so that I would have 2 of the largest rings. I think I've seen something similar to this done with hula hoops, like very on a large scale, but I'm just going to make something small that can just hold something light. So I am going to use a combination of hot glue, and then later when that's dry, I do also use some E6000 over top, and I'm going to glue the base of each ring over to the side of my sign. I think you can see what I did there, like right in the corner, and hold that until it's dry. And then I did zip tie the 2 rings at the top, went around my sign with some of that black and white gingham ribbon. Now, to make my plant holder be able to hang, I did take some jute twine and looped that at the top. Then I'm just, for an extra decorative touch, going to add some of these larger wood beads for, like I said, just a little bit more decorative touch. I think I used 3 or 4 of those, and then we will move on to what we're going to put on this shelf. Now, because I only have used glue to attach the hoops to the shelf, I would not use this for anything super heavy or breakable. So just keep that in mind. If you did want it to be able to hold more, I would probably attach the rings to the wood part of the frame and use staples, like from a staple gun or something. But this is just going to be something small and decorative to hold something light. So I had these tiny fake succulents in these little pots. These were originally from Target's Dollar Spot as well. I am going to paint the pots black because just to go with the color scheme already of the project. So once my pots were painted black, I put my succulents back in and just set them on the little shelf. I think this is so cute. You could also maybe hang 1 more succulent down from the top of the rings. If you are on Facebook, please head over to my Monarch Mom DIY Facebook page, like and follow it, as I will also be adding more information. For today's final DIY, I'm going to be making a round hello door sign using this round sign from Walmart, this hello from Dollar Tree, some greenery, and a stencil from Magnolia Design Company. So like I said, this came from Walmart. It's got the 3 sections there. I am turning it sideways because I'm going to use the lines there to line up my stencil. I decided to use this mini plaid stencil from Magnolia. Once I have it fuzzed, I'm going to line the side of my stencil up with that groove, and then using some of my white chalk paste, I'm only going to do the plaid stencil on the 2 side sections. So you'll see I will have to use my stencil 3 different times. So 1 time on each side and then once more to get those little spaces at the bottom. But this is very simple to do using the chalk paste, just pressing it into the mesh stencil, and then once I have all the spaces covered, I peel it up and am amazed that it creates such a beautiful mini plaid pattern. Next, taking this MDF hello sign from Dollar Tree, I'm going to paint everywhere except for the back with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Maize. I'm really loving the pop of yellow color in a couple of today's DIYs. So I did take the time to paint inside all those grooves as well. And then I did spray it with clear spray. Now using some of this burlap and gingham ribbon, I'm going to make 2 loops, and then I'm going to make the one on top a little smaller to make a double loop bow, I guess it would be. And I'm going to try zip tying it. This is not wired ribbon, so I kind of went slowly with the zip tie to make sure that the ribbon was kind of scrunching how I wanted it to, and just sliding it around to make sure the loops on my bow were as close to the same size as possible. This would definitely be much easier to do with wired ribbon, but I just thought this ribbon was so cute and matched the project so well. So tighten up your zip tie, and then you can go ahead and trim that, and it'll just go up here towards the top. I will cover up the zip tie though. To attach the hello word, I am going to use a combination of wood glue and hot glue because it is a little heavier, and I want that instant hold with the hot glue and then that permanent bond with the wood glue. I'm going to line this up towards the bottom of my round sign. I'm going to use more of this greenery. Now I will say it took me a little while to figure out how to get all this attached. I wanted this to not fall apart, so I knew I couldn't just glue these on with hot glue. So you're going to see here, right there, I have the individual pieces of greenery. They are staple gunned into the back. I should have taken a picture of the back, but then I took another piece of the ribbon and glued it over top so you couldn't see the staples or the stems. You can see how I covered up the zip tie with some 2 pieces of the smaller black and white gingham ribbon, and I'm just knotting those on the back. So I am going to put a dot of hot glue here to start my bow on, and then I do end up putting 2 staples in between the 2 layers of the bow. So here's our finished sign. I love it. You could also add beads to the twine as well. Thanks again so much for joining me today. Please let me know in the comments which of these projects was your favorite, and we'll see you next time. Take care.